Some would say I've lost touch with reality. Have I? Did I? Humanitarian airlifts. Well, actually, I believe I did humanitarian aid actually in probably in I believe in Russia too. There's probably some Russian relief efforts I did, and even with the RAF, I was always doing some sort of airlift or something or humanitarian airlifts. You know, it's I wish that they would go back to the 1920s because I know I was doing humanitarian stuff since like the 1920s, probably 1700s really, and I just got a lot better at it by the time by the time the 1940s came around. I was pretty damn good at doing humanitarian aid. Like I remember the first like alcohol shots, and I kind of changed over to rubbing alcohol because they were drinking a little bit too much of the other alcohol, and I only had so much, and they were drinking it too fast, so I had to like cut them down and have two kinds of alcohol, which I believe I had a brown bottle and a black bottle. There's a bottle colored where so they wouldn't accidentally drink the rubbing alcohol because I didn't want them to do that. So there was different colored bottles so they wouldn't accidentally drink the wrong alcohol because I knew that they were drinking shots of alcohol. So and I didn't mind that. That was fine. From when I was doing Russia, and I had their military limit set to 3 shots a day for the cold. Anyway, though, so I've always been doing humanitarian effort with trains and planes, and whenever I heard about a disaster, whenever there was a disaster, going way back to when the first towns would get washed out by some accident or something, the mills would be set up within 3 days, or 6 days or so, or a very short time. I always hit things really hard and got them working again because I had a lot of money, so I could get things going again pretty quick as soon as I heard about them or it was known. At least back then. Nowadays, I got people, I guess. Anyway, though, but back in the 1920s and 1940s, I played things a lot more closer to the cuff, as they say. And I funded a lot more things personally. Like, there's a lot of stuff I was like, I'm personally funding it. And so that's kind of like how when they say, oh, the government funded this, it's like, well, not exactly. I funded it. The government didn't have that much money or that much authority initially. There really was no one else that could just be like, okay, and we're going to use these factories and these planes there, and it's going to get done. And sometimes it was a rocky start. Sometimes it was not that good where snowplows would go out and they would get just as stranded as the people they're trying to rescue. And so, but slowly but for surely, I nibbled at it, and we got the humanitarian air lifts going, and then I was able to do worldwide humanitarian lifts, which was awesome. I was like, yes, I'm doing it. It was back in my heyday when I was rich and powerful, and technically 1960s, I guess they say, or 1950s. To me, it was like when I was a child, but whatever. Anyway, back then, things were different. Like I said, I had been working my way up in inventing and wealth and everything, so I was basically a king or emperor. And so when I said I want to provide humanitarian effort, it was done. Just like later on, I was like, I want weather reports, and it's done. So I was able to do a lot back then. Nowadays, there's some contention about whether or not I actually have money, apparently, which is kind of ridiculous, but whatever. Anyway, though, but yeah, the humanitarian airlifts, that was actually me and my private military, basically, that was providing all that stuff. It's just kind of funny because I was paying for it personally because I had invented flight and I had all the airplanes anyway. So, and I had airplane factories. So, for me to provide, air power was just like, and then it's just a matter of fuel. And I had actually done some oil refinery stuff at some point. So I had all the fuel I could possibly need. So anyway, though, but yeah, I was able to do all that stuff. And then I also had farms and trains. And so, to do humanitarian aid stuff was just like snapping my fingers. because I owned everything. So I was like, I want this done. So it was done. And, I was like the cavalry back then. I really do miss those days. I do. I miss those days of being the cavalry. um, it actually made me feel good. Actually, sometimes seeing the videos, sometimes now I actually even cry because, it was my personal order. It was done by my personal order. And all I had to do was say, do it. And the planes would descend on there like locusts or like what's called like bees or something. They would just swarm the area, and very quickly everything would get straightened out, and there'd be houses and generators and whatever else the people needed to get themselves started back up in civilization. Building civilization was truly hard, yes, but repairing civilization was not so hard. Like repairing like a busted up town, the human life was always bad, but the actual stuff that was actually became easier and easier for me over the years. I could just snap my fingers and it'd be done. 1920s, providing humanitarian effort was very hard because with the steam engines and everything else, frozen wood doesn't burn very well, and I actually experienced that. Yeah, frozen wood does not burn. And it takes a bit. And I think I actually even had a frozen wood advisory thing, letter or something to all the people so they could use frozen wood. They could just put it in and it would, they'd overstoke the fire. So, the fire wouldn't go out and it would thaw the wood and then burn. Because, for cold climate, running steam engines and stuff. That was something probably somewhere in there. I'm sure it has information on how to burn frozen wood. Is one of those little programs or projects I had done because chopped wood is the best, but it's kind of funny because a lot of those openings on the things those are actually round and open so you can stick a whole log in there. But of course, the firemen learned it's better to chop the wood up into pieces than burn whole logs, of course. So. I mean, I'm not a fireman. I don't know anything about trains really that much compared to other people. So they learned how to run my trains a lot better than I did. So anyway, but that's what the holes were designed for, is that size of log. So anyway, and I think the whole idea is that it turns to charcoal. You put in that size of log and then it'll turn into charcoal. And there's a whole burning schedule for the size of log you put in. With the hole, it's the hole is set to the maximum size of log that you want to put in or something like that. So you put in that size of log and then it burns and it turns into charcoal and then and that's why the holes on some of them are round, because that's the maximum size of log you'd want to put in there. It's kind of figured in there, one of those little things. Anyway, yeah, so interesting. That's all. I'm basically a museum piece now. It's kind of frustrating because I used to be someone. And I used to be something special, something different. And some people say, you say jump and I'll say hi, and it's like, that's stupid. It had nothing to do with power or control or any of that other crap. It had to do with I could do stuff, and so I did do stuff, and it felt damn good doing it, honestly. Like I say, sometimes I could cry because, I was that person. I was that person that everyone, big white ships, you see them on the horizon, or aircraft, or shiny aircrafts in the sky. I was that person that people cheered to see, and or cheered to see my airplanes anyway, because they knew help was coming, and felt damn good. That's why it really upsets me when I see my stuff used for killing people. It's not right. I even designed bomb bay doors actually to drop hay. They're never supposed to drop bombs. I mean, I just did that just because, but that wasn't what they were for. Anyway. Anyway, You invent something you don't have control over anymore. So, yeah. But anyway, roads and planes and alcohol and all kinds of stuff and steam engines. I was the cavalry, or at least my people were. Grand old people. Salute. That's why people saluted Hitler or me or whoever. I mean, they always thought it was Carnegie, always thought it was Hitler, always thought it was someone they didn't realize. It's by my order. As soon as I found out something was going on, I handled it. Every time. And often it didn't matter if I was going to go broke doing it. And I could have actually gone broke doing it. I don't know. I mean, it was definitely taking the world output just to handle some of the storms. I mean, I don't know, at least a fair amount. I'm sure I lost money every single time because, I mean, technically the stuff is being replaced for free, so I was in a war with Mother Nature. Me versus it. So, anyway. Me versus the forces of nature. Yeah, well, I took it on. It got in my way, I guess you could say. Anyway, I just didn't like to see people suffering, so. Anyway, initially, started out with rag-wing planes and cheesy planes, but then, got aluminum, got better stuff, so things got better. But, yeah, that's what I was always using my Air Force for. That's why I really didn't need really didn't need jets. I was happy with prop craft because they're more efficient at lower altitudes, and that's where all the humanitarian aid really is in those low what's called, I mean, jets are good for getting to the disaster spot better, but realistically, the props were always better because they could land on rough fields and they could provide humanitarian aid easier, and that's really what I was using them for. So,